Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Let's go for it.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we are here today to do a Geeky Gentleman character discussion. This is a follow-up to our video from last week. I usually try to keep these relatively, variety heavy, but I don't know, Superman character, Batman character, that's a little bit of variety there. And so last week we talked about John Kent, the son of Superman, and this week I figured it'd be fun to follow that up and talk about Damian Wayne, the one true son of Batman.
You just already got people in the comments shouting at you for that.
I know, dude. Like, I made that funny little gag comic based on the issue of The Button, where like Bruce is like, Father, if I ever had the moment to talk to you, I wanted to tell you one thing. You're a grandfather. I have a son. And it's like silent panel, and then it's like Thomas Wayne just goes. And like that really blew up. But then like people started replying to it and be like, Bruce, you have like 4 sons, you jerk. And it's just like all this shit that comes at Batman fans, or at, I guess, at Damian Wayne fans. I don't know. Like, people get shitty that Damian Wayne is considered the son of Batman, and Dick Grayson and Jason Todd and Tim Drake and Cassandra Cain and all of them are not considered Batman's kids. And so I think that is actually a legitimately great place to start the video.
Mm-hmm. Because it's one of those things where... Oh, you go ahead.
No, please.
So it's one of those things where it's always kind of been there since the beginning. Like, it only took a year for Robin to show up. Like, Batman and the kid sidekick has always kind of fitted, like Batman and the child, simply because he had a loss of his parents and then he fulfills that parental role. It's like a classic heroic story that is filled from many things, in Batman just like the most potent modern example. But it was always had that difference of, oh, we can keep him young if it's not by blood. We can have like a 10-year difference between Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne. We can keep Batman eternally like fit and healthy with 50 different Robins, and he doesn't have to have that same kind of responsibility as a character, because he can always shave off as, oh, he sees him as a brother, or like he's his ward or something. But the moment Grant Morrison decides, oh, I like that random non-canon comic that I thought was canon, but Son of the D-Bird, and decides to bring in, oh, what if Batman and Talia did have like a blood child, and now he's just here forever.
And like, that's the thing for me is Damian is a son to Bruce in a way that the other kids aren't, because Damian didn't need Bruce the way that Dick and Jason and Tim did. Like, Tim is maybe the most arguable there, whereas, like, Bruce needed Tim more than Tim needed Bruce, but I think there's enough that's happened in Tim Drake's history to prove that, like, being Robin really did help him as a person. But, like, Damian did not need Bruce Wayne. If anything, Bruce maybe made Damian a little bit worse before Dick came in and made him a lot better, you know?
Precisely. It was one of the things where Batman, for once, was with a child who wasn't emotionally healthier than him. And he couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I find that really interesting. So, like, Bruce is this mentor figure to Dick and the others. And he's, like, trying to take their trauma and make them better than him. which I love. Like I think it's an injustice where Wonder Woman kind of throws some shade at Batman, talking about Robin. It's like, oh, what? Try to make him Batman 2.0, and he says, I'm trying to make him better. And that's so good, because that's exactly how the Robins have kind of just naturally worked since we started introducing so many of them and had to try to justify it. But Damian comes around, and he is worse off than any of them, but in a way that he doesn't realize, in a way that Bruce can't help. Like, you know, Dick Grayson is filled with rage and the desire for vengeance at the death of his parents. Damian doesn't have that. Damian and Bruce teaches Dick how to, like, channel that and how to search for justice and how not to become, you know, overly obsessed and stuff. And he sees himself in Dick, and he fixes it, for better or worse. Damian doesn't have that. Damian, like, has the 13-year-old boy understanding of Batman. Oh, he's really cool and badass, and he drives a cool car, and he's super rich and gets all the women, and he can do whatever he wants because he's Batman. And he never 100% loses that, which is what I love about the character.
It's one of those things where I always like to compare it to Bruce Wayne has like and Batman specifically has a very like royal feel to him, to like compared to most superheroes, and it doesn't really get talked about a lot, but it's always definitely there. Like, there's a reason why one of his names is the Dark Knight, is he's literally lives in a castle as from a royal heritage of family who were like destined to make Gotham better, and now he's under that charge. And all the Robins, like, you can maybe argue Tim had that to some extent because he was from a richer family, but even then it was never to the same extent as the Waynes. Damian's the first other like royal. Like, he has the bloodline. He has the Wayne family name and also the Al Ghul family name. And that brings a lot of baggage with it and a lot of different perspective of how the world is meant to be compared to the other Robins. Whereas you mentioned he has, like, the 13-year-old look at Batman. He also kind of has, like, the woke 30-year-old who thinks they know Batman kind of look at Batman, where he's just, oh, we just beat up the poor because they're less than us.
Yes, so much yes. And like that's the thing, is like Damian just thinks, oh no, the no killing rule is just silliness. That's not really Batman. Batman kills people all the time. Damian's like that fucker posting on forums like the images of Batman like hanging a guy and carrying a gun. It's like, see, Batman can carry a gun, it's fine. And everyone else is like, no, listen, it happened. No one's saying it didn't happen. But you're really misinterpreting stuff right now to fit a very particular worldview. And yeah, Damian is so that. And so what I like about the character is he starts off that way. And again, he never 100% loses it. It's not like he completely turns 100% around and sees Batman as, you know, less than that. He's still got the, you know, I'm kind of better than everyone else. Like, I love how he talks to John and Supergirl. Because you and I did that review forever ago of the World's Finest issue with Damian and Kara. And they're working a case together, and he's just like, he just uses her as like a tool. It's like, use your X-ray vision, tell me what you see here. And she's like, you don't just get to command me around, kid. And he's like, why not? My father does it to yours. To your cousin. And he does a lot of the same shit to John, which is really, really interesting. But there's a definite change over how many years the character has been written there, because when he does it to John, he's still a bit of a jerk about it, but at the same time he's like, I'm friends with a Kryptonian, this is actually kind of cool. Like, he's got like a joy to it. It's not as like bitter and cold and useless and utilitarian about it. He's much more kind of in the moment and enjoying himself in being Robin, and that's all thanks to Dick Grayson.
Yeah, exactly. Dick Grayson is the one who brought the kid out of the Warrior. He's the only one who can get Damian to have that side, because he's the only one who's got the patience and the understanding and the skill where not only he commands his respect, because he earned it, but he also knows how to keep pushing his button until he either just bursts out at laughing and you finally see him as a 10-year-old, or he just kind of breaks down and you finally see him as a 10-year-old. Like, he's just like he did with Bruce. Like, Dick Grayson knows how to break the mask of Batman, and in this case Damian inherited that hard. And it's really interesting to see, especially comparing it when he first shows up. And I'm kind of curious about this because you were reading comics when Damian first showed up, right?
No, the very first comic I read that was current was Return of Bruce Wayne #1.
All right, so it's still relatively where he was at, but like when you went back and read those early things, like what was your reaction to Damian? Because I know a lot of people, a lot of that still sticks, but it's gone away over the time. But he was like universally hated, and it was intentional. It was kind of a risk to do that, but because of what we've said, I think it was inherent. You needed to do that to set up this mask of this kid who's just fucking damaged.
No, I totally agree. And like I remember reading Damian, and I don't know, I have like a sick fascination with characters who are kind of hateable, and I kind of like love them right out the gate. Like Damian's first line in comics, well, his first line to Batman. I will criticize Grant Morrison. I think it was a mistake to have Damian talk before he's in front of Batman. Because his first real line in comics is, "Father, I imagined you taller." It's one of the greatest character introductions ever, because that's how Damian, like that line, and I don't know if it's intentional. It's Grant Morrison, so I like to think it is. That line so perfectly sets up everything that Damian has been told about Batman his whole life. He has this image of Batman in his mind that Bruce could never conceivably live up to, and it's of course been tainted and twisted by Talia and Ra's. And so you just look at this kid who's incredibly violent, prone to outburst, spoiled rotten, just everything that could be wrong with him is wrong with him, and he's really never had a chance. And I have a thing for characters who never had a chance. You and I, before we were recording, were talking out the wazoo about Vegeta. Same thing with Vegeta. The kid was born royal into a race into a society that just had no regard for the sanctity of life and only cared about strength. And then he was raised as a child soldier and a slave. That kid never had a goddamn chance to be anything but what he was by the time you get to the Saiyan Saga. Same thing with Damian. By the time he's introduced to Bruce Wayne, he never had a chance to be anything but a monster. And he's like literally every single bad thing about a 10-year-old. There's this old band commercial of a kid, and he's like probably less than 10, he's probably like 5, of a kid just throwing a tantrum in a grocery store about wanting some candy, and he's like, throwing stuff off the shelves and breaking it on the floor and, crying and kicking around in a circle. And you just see the father sitting there, and it's like this younger guy, and he's so not sure what to do in the moment, and he just looks completely drained and overwhelmed. And then it's like, use condoms comes up. It's a really, really dark ad, but like, that's kind of the image of Damian when he first shows up, is just the worst possible child. And Bruce's reaction to it is the worst thing you could do in that situation, where he kind of leans into it a little bit. Like, I remember that moment of Bruce, like, shouting at Damian that he's brought shame upon their house. And that is so, like, the worst possible move in that moment.
Yeah, he's like he starts talking to him like how he would talk to Raz or Talia, because he's coming from the perspective like, okay, I have to talk to this kid how he's used to, because that's how I can get through to him, or that's how I can mold him to do what I want. But it's still manipulative, because first he tries to do him like every other Robin. Mm-hmm. But then he really starts leaning into the martial arts terminology, because that's what he knew when he was that age, when he was being trained across the world. So he is talking from experience, but it's the worst kind of experience, because it's literally what shaped him into a weapon, and he's using his conditioning as a child against his own son. Not through malicious acts or anything. He's trying to stop him from decapitating people, but it's still a very big example of why Bruce and Damian really can't, even now, I don't think can ever work as Batman and Robin together as like a duo. They can be efficient. They'll probably be one of the greatest. Like if you were just gonna look at stats wise or like efficiency, like these two are like two of the most disciplined warriors in fiction. Like they will take down a place, but there won't be like a word spoken between them. There's no dynamic there. There's no dynamic duo, because it is very much a place of we are just from completely different worlds.
See, I disagree with that. I think there's no word spoken between them because they are so similar.
Right.
That's the thing that I think.
Yeah.
I think that they it's like when you're this is gonna sound weird, and hopefully people don't judge me too hard for it. It's like when you're in a relationship for a really long time. Like, my wife and I go out to dinner. We don't really talk all that much when we're out in public at dinner and stuff. We're just sitting there enjoying each other. We're around each other. We're perfectly content and happy. We just don't have much to say because we just know each other so well and we're so similar in that regard, you know? So, and we're both kind of introverted people. And so when we're out in public, we don't like to be very like, and doing silly voices coming from our pet. We don't like doing that out in public because we know it's kind of weird. But, like, that's the thing we do. We talk a fair amount when we're at home, but there's not, like, a need for it so much because we're just kind of on such a similar wavelength. And I think that's what you get with Damian and Bruce, where I think they are a very efficient, very, very good duo for Batman and Robin. They're just not a particularly engaging duo as a reader.
Right, I think maybe that is definitely a better way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think they work and bounce off each other on a character level really well, and like as people really well. But it's just reading successful, perfectly understanding partners is kind of boring as from a dramatic standpoint.
And it's just one of those things where I also feel like because we introduced Damian and he's not like 16 or like 20, he's at such a volatile, like he's like 10 when we meet him, you could argue 9, and then as over the course we've kind of reached the point where he's like 14 or like 13 coming on 14, and like a lot of that is interesting to see. He's kind of naturally progressed, like barring some like Teen Titans writers who like regress him, I've heard, or shit like that. He's had a very natural growth, which is rare to see in a comic book character. Where almost in real time. I mean, arguably because of comic books, it's been longer than that. But for the DC universe, you've seen him grow up in a way where he's had backslides and he's had things that you learn a lesson. It doesn't just stick all the time, and I kind of appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like Damian has definitely been a really consistently written character, and it all really does boil down to the Morrison run. The fact that Bruce Wayne's dead for a year is really, really great, and Damian grows so much while Bruce is gone. It's really fascinating. I can't remember the issue, but it's right before Return of Bruce Wayne really starts kicking off. And Damian's talking to Dick, and he's gone through so much growth. And he just says, you know, I really wish that I'd spent more time with Father. Because the time we had together, I was so different. And I wasted it because of that. And I love that scene so much. It is such a great moment of like, this is, you know, yeah, he's still a kid and Dick has brought that kid out of him. But he's still got like this just very he's very adult. He's a very like grown kid. He's not a very whimsical kid. Like he has those moments that Dick can bring out of him, but like he like Bruce just I don't think was ever really meant to be a kid, if that makes sense. Like Damian is that kid that's always just waiting to grow up. And he's kind of wasting his childhood in a way because of that. And that's what makes those moments where he's being a kid so refreshing.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to put it. But I would maybe argue thanks to Dick, and maybe because of a lot of his upbringing, in a different way than Bruce, where like the moment his parents shut up, like Bruce Wayne made himself that and like made that choice for himself. Whereas Damian only, and I want to kind of get into it later because it's your favorite moment ever and we'll talk about it. But Damian's choice comes a lot later than that when he decides what his destiny is going to be. And even after that, he's still more of a kid than I can imagine Bruce Wayne ever was. Because when you get stuff like Batcow and he's got like Alfred the cat and he's got like such a cute like adoration for animals because he can't stand people, but like animals he will protect until like protect with two C's. Like he is just the old. That's when like his cinnamon roll comes out. That is when Damian is like, because he managed to be saved. This is the effect like Dick Grayson and like Alfred and everyone's had on him, where he is still getting to have a childhood that wasn't fully robbed of him. Like unlike Bruce, who literally had no childhood after his parents died, like Damian being able to be friends with John and everything, like we've saved him, and that's a really fucking endearing thing.
No, I totally agree. That is the thing. Like, you get those moments still where he's he gets to be a kid, but then like there's always that moment after it where he kind of has to like check himself, you know. And it's like, oh yeah, but I've little interest in this. Like, yes, I play video games, but only because it annoys father. Like shit like that. Really, it's tactical training. You know, shit like that is why I love Damian. Is he's always kind of like he's almost a little ashamed that he enjoys being a kid sometimes, and so that's always back there. It's always really fascinating. But yeah, you mentioned the moment, so we got to talk about the moment.
So like, I kind of want to do the lead up to it as well because I feel like this is very important if we kind of look at this almost like a structure, because again, Damian and like a lot of characters we've done here has such a defined arc where so Bruce dies and he's still a little shit, but then first we introduce
Mother,
him
I want a Batmobile.
Yeah, exactly. He gets like he I would have killed for a flying Batmobile when I was your age.
Can we just quote Grant Morrison lines for the rest of the video?
You just redefined the word wrong.
I'm sorry, you were saying.
So no, literally, I just wanted to do that. It's one of those things. So like, we start Batman and Robin #1, which is like one of those comic books where a single issue redefines how a character should have been written for the rest of the time, and then we just didn't continue that momentum. Like that is what Batman and Robin should have just kept being. But we start that, and it's Damian's Robin now. And that obviously brings with it, he's wanted to do that for so long. He wanted to be, because that's where he gets to have that mantle. That's where he gets to be involved. He always wanted to be involved, but like you said, he had a very corrupted idea of what that meant. So he's Robin with Dick, but he does not, he's like, I want to be Batman. He's like, fuck you, you can't handle it, Dick Grayson, and I'll do it. I don't need you. You're an embarrassment to the cow. And I think starting their relationship there at the worst possible place, where it's, now that we've had all this history and so many moments between them, it's really almost hard to go back to these issues where Damian just fucking hates Dick Grayson, and Dick Grayson's like, how do I get through to this kid? He's such a little shit.
How do I reach these kids?
These kids! And we go through that to where over the course of the run, because Dick starts proving himself, when he gets confident in being Batman and the role of Batman and doing it in his own way, like Damian gets to see that in a way that isn't the same way of Bruce, where in a way he can never really get Bruce as a person because he spent his whole childhood being told how great Bruce was. Whereas he got to see Dick Grayson entirely, and then he was still amazed by him. And that's where the respect comes in, which is very important to Damian's character, is he treats characters he respects very differently.
100%. And that's one of the things I really like about it. So when you get further down the line and you've got Damian, who's now completely respecting of Dick Grayson, and he goes to his mother, and his mother wants him to take off the Robin costume. She says something to like get rid of that silly costume.
Yeah, get rid of that silly costume and your circus boy.
Yeah, and she's so ready for him to just come back, and he's like, now you're gonna be Ra's al Ghul, and that's gonna be better than being Batman. And Damian refuses, and it's such a good moment where she's like, if you leave here, you leave as an enemy of the House Al Ghul. And he like looks down at his feet for a second, and then like sticks his chin up to look at his mother, and says, I hope I'll be a worthy one. And that is like, seriously, that is the moment that closes the door shut on Damian being that, like, you know, super 100% all the time self-serious martial artist that's like destined to rule the world. That is the moment where Damian throws all of that away, and it's never coming back. Like, anytime someone uses it as like the threat or the thing of like, oh, Talia's trying to get Damian back under her fold, no, it's never happening. Like, she wants him back as a weapon against Bruce, not to use Damian as a weapon, but to hurt Bruce. She wants to like essentially kidnap him. He's never going back under his own volition. And that's just, it's so fascinating. I love that moment so much. And just like character development, the moment.
Damian Wayne has the most hardcore and devoted, more than anyone else in the Bat family, to joining the cause, because he is the only member of the Bat family who joined them by orphaning himself.
Oh, that is interesting. I guess I never thought of it that way, but that is a really, really good point.
Because then, at that point, is when both his parents are dead at that point, to him.
Mm-hmm. And, like, that's what made the King run, the King moment with Damian so interesting. Because I'm having a hard time remembering which issue came out first. But like, there's that moment in the Rules of Engagement arc where, you know, Catwoman and Batman go to Talia al Ghul and all that stuff, and Damian catches up with them at the end, and he asks, "How's Mother?" Like, I think that's the first time Damian had much interaction with her, vicariously through Bruce. They'd had much interaction with her since dying in Batman Inc., you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then she comes back a couple issues shortly after. It's either right before or shortly after. And headcanon for me, it's after that moment. Then she comes back in Super Sons and threatens to kill John Kent, which is kind of hilarious. She knows he can do it. She knows he's a super Kryptonian, and yet she still like holds a sword to his throat. It's so weird and trippy. And like somehow it still feels dangerous. Yeah. But no, I really, really love that moment though of just, you know, how's Mother? Where he's like, he knows that the family's never getting back together, but he's still, again, that's that moment where he's still a kid in a lot of ways, where he's just, he is kind of sad that he's never going to get to, you know, spend Christmas with Mom and Dad.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, what really hit me was, like, the issues at the start of that, where, like, the Bat family are talking about, like, Alfred says, oh, they're gonna get married. And, like, everyone's, like, going back and forth, kind of having a joke. But then they start, like, jokingly, like, blame Damian for it. Because they're like, oh, you're Robin at the time. You're meant to be dark. You're meant to be the light to his darkness. You're meant to stop him. You're the darkest one. That's probably he's doing all this. And they're not being serious about it. But then Damian just, like, starts breaking down crying because he's like, no, you're right. It's my fault. Mum and Dad aren't ever going to get together again. It's such a kid thing. Like, I personally went through that shit as well. Of, like, I've had that moment when you're just a kid and you just think, oh, this is my fault. I broke up Mum and Dad. And like the fact that he went through that and Dick Grayson has to basically go there, it's just you see the facade just go, and you see him just this kid who just needs a hug.
And that was one of the, like when New 52 started up and Tomasi took over Batman and Robin, I had a lot of problems at the beginning of that run, particularly when like Damian fucking just grabs a bat out of the air and crushes it. God, I hate that moment. But to Tomasi's credit, he kind of develops the relationship between Bruce and Damian a lot. I'd argue maybe more than Morrison does.
Oh yeah, 100%. But I feel like that's maybe. I feel like that first arc says all that can ever be said with their relationship. I don't think there's a lot of gas in that tank.
You might be right, but I really like the moment where that arc, I don't know if it's the first arc or if it's like later on in the run. It's been a long time since I've read it, but like I love that the culmination for all that, and what really makes them start working together as a team as opposed to second guessing one another constantly, is Bruce just breaks down and hugs Damian.
Yeah, that's at the end of the first arc.
Yeah, like that is a really, really great moment. And it's what works so well about that sequence, or about that arc is, Tomasi does a lot to really develop them and show, listen, you can't have a relationship where both people are constantly waiting for the other to betray them, and it makes the fucking is it bad? No, not Bad Blood. What is it? The Court of the Owls movie.
I think it's just called Court of Owls.
Is it? Okay. That's so fucking weird because they combine Snyder and Tomasi and Morrison all into one fucking weird ass movie. Yeah, but like you have that movie and like they straight take a lot of the cues from that, but like Damian's being manipulated by an assassin and Bruce doesn't trust Damian and they're just constantly like looking over each other's backs and that's just because they're so similar. The apple did not fall far from the tree, and so it takes a minute for them to develop trust between one another.
And I think that's really interesting, and that's a story that needed to be told, but it's also like once you've told that story, unlike Dick and Damian, who their dynamic together propels them both, there's not much after that, because then you just get, like we said at the beginning of this, the efficient ninjas. Like, these are the two warriors of the Bat family, and they're really good at it, but they're also like, there's not going to be a lot of quips.
Yeah, it's like if you put Damian and Cass on a team together, they just wouldn't talk. Like, he'd do the fucking hand signals and she'd get it. Whereas, like, you put Dick and Damian or Tim and Damian would do the fucking hand signals and they'd be like, what are you doing? We're not even like within earshot of these guys. We can talk about whatever. It's fine. And he'd just like be so annoyed with their asses. Like, yeah, that's totally perfect. All right. We talked a lot about John's relationship with Damian in the last one, but before we wrap up, let's spend a little time talking about Damian's relationship to John.
I think that's it's one of those things where first off, when they meet, it's almost like antagonistic, because he's got his own Kryptonian now. He wants to create his own Batman versus Superman fights because he wants to show that he can do everything Dad can. So I need to best the Kryptonian, and they kind of go into that thing where he's the big kid, he's the dickhead friend who says, "Oh, I'm older than you, so you have to do what I say." But then it almost kind of leads to a Dick Grayson thing, except this time the position of power is much more equal, because rather than having the big brother figure who you can't boss around and you kind of just like, you can snap back at him and like you can shout, but at the end of the day, he's probably got a better idea for this than you. John and Damian are both kind of making up as they go along, but Damian's got that extra bit of experience, and I think it's a really clever move to put him in that role. And then I haven't read the books, but I just know the concept is good, and then have him transition to try and be the leader of the Titans. I think it's very good move at this point in the character's history to introduce him to characters who have less experience than he does, and now he has to try and be their Bruce.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing I really like about his relationship with John is it is very antagonistic, but then like you said earlier, Damian treats people very differently when they've earned his respect. And John does that, and like there's this great moment at the end of the first series. Is it the first series or is it, I can't remember if it's the first series or the first arc. But there's this great moment where, you know, Kid Amazo's got the Justice League all wrapped up, and John went in a little too headstrong, a little too cocky, and got captured too. And Cyborg's the only one that can still help. And Damian's like, nah, fuck this. And he jumps out of a plane because he's like, I gotta go save my partner. And he goes in and just to save John. Like, he abandons a perfectly reasonable plan. He abandons all that because now I need to save John. He needs my help right now, and I can't just sit here and let him suffer, let him be hurt, because he's my friend. He's my best friend, and I can't just stand by the sidelines and let this happen. And then that just gets... That whole series gets so good, especially in moments when, like... Because you get the bad future thing where John Kent apparently kills millions of people, and evil Tim Drake comes back to kill him. And Superman, like, seriously pulls Damian aside. It's like, listen, I'm worried that this might have happened because of your influence on him. And John stands up for Damian in that moment, and that's when you realize that these two are, like, super close-knit friends that just won't let anything tear them apart. And it's such a great series for that. The plotting is all over the place, and it kind of bites off more than it can chew sometimes, but the character work is just so damn perfect that, like, once Tomasi hits on a thing, he knows exactly how to hammer it in, and it gets really cool in that regard.
And I think that's a character aspect I kind of want to touch on as well. Is Damian, if he inherited like one positive thing from Bruce, like specifically, is he has that will, when he developed it, and now that he's got it, it was kind of always there, but now under Dick Grayson, I think he kind of matured it, where he will not stop until he saves someone. And I love his death sequence so much, because this little kid has the fucking balls of like, he goes through so much shit when he's fighting the gigantic Damian baby clone, when he's getting stabbed, his back's broken, he's getting arrows thrown in his back, and he just won't stop until he stops it. And he's just like, I promised Father I wouldn't kill. Like, he's still keeping all his things. There's an arc in the Nightwing book where Dr. Hurt comes back, and Damian goes to Nightwing, and Nightwing's like, oh, shouldn't you be with the Titan? Shouldn't you be with Bruce? Like, we aren't really a thing anymore. And Damian's just like, Grayson, you've always been a fool. You know fine well I wouldn't be able to leave you alone without me. You'd get killed in a week.
Oh, that is so perfect.
It's like he literally turns up and he brings back their old Batmobile, and he's just like, no matter what, like, again, one of my favorite moments in all of comics is it's literally Grant Morrison turning to the reader and saying this, but it's when Nightwing and Nightwing and Damian are behind a wall as they're getting shot at by Talia's goons, and Damian's just like, we were the best, Grayson. No matter what anyone says, never forget it. And like Dick Grayson's just like, yeah, we can't help being great. And they jump over, but it is that thing where Damian will break out the Batcave and like change people's passwords to save people. Like, he has that Bruce Wayne drive more so than like most of the characters in the Bat family, where he will do nothing. Like, he will go through physical pain and mental torture no matter what just to save a life. And that's really fucking cool from this kid who had no sanctity of life when he first showed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, like, you can't imagine 10-year-old Damian being able to save anyone, like, put his life on the line for anyone. No way. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm more important to the world than them.
And he dies by self-sacrifice. Like, Matt Morris is fucking genius.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a great character arc. So all that being said, let's talk about this to wrap up. because you and I are of different opinions on this one. And that is Damian Wayne Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So your take is Damian Wayne being Batman has to, like, always be the darkest timeline, right?
Yes. My take has always been Damian Wayne Batman is the transition period, the growing pains between Gotham as it is now and Gotham as it is in Batman Beyond.
Okay.
Where Damian is the reason why things got worse, and then Terry and Damian are what makes things start to get better.
Okay. And see, I don't hate that. But I do like to imagine, like, I like the idea that the Damian Batman we see in Batman number 666 is like the dark future version of, you know, Bruce Wayne dies and Damian becomes Batman because he's the only one willing to do it, which I thought was really interesting and played with in Battle for the Cowl, where, like, you know, Jason was willing to do it, but he was going to corrupt it, and Tim was willing to do it, but he wasn't good enough. And then, like, Dick had to be, you know, kind of dragged along to it. So I like the idea that, you know, if just a couple things didn't line up, yeah, Damian would be the only one willing to be Batman. And then that, because he wasn't emotionally ready for it, because he didn't have Dick Grayson, that's what went wrong. But I like to imagine that that's just one timeline. But I like to think that there's a timeline where, you know, the Damian who went through the arc, who was Dick Grayson's Robin, got to be Batman in his own right. And I really like to imagine that timeline of Damian Wayne Batman.
I guess I'll just ask you this question because I'm my personal headcanon for, like, the Batman family has always been, it's kind of what completely blanking on it, Tinian in his Detective Comics run, he like lined it out, and I kind of agree with it 100%, is whenever Bruce goes down or whatever happens to Bruce, like, it's one of those things where there's always going to be a replacement. There's always going to be Dick at first, but then he makes the thing is Dick Grayson was never going to be the same kind of Batman as Bruce. He'll have a family, he'll move on, he'll eventually just have a happy ending, and then once that's gone, is Jason's the same thing as Battle of the Cowl. It's like everyone's got their own shit, and then it just leads to Damian becoming Batman. But although he's still, this is maybe where we differ on this, but I guess although he's still gone through everything he's done with Batman and Robin and everything with Dick Grayson and John Kent, the idea of still being Batman wears you down to the extent where it's completely different, and you can't prepare for being Batman, especially if the universe is kept the same, where everything around Batman 666 is the same, where, like, the villains keep getting worse. Like, it's like the Dark Knight Returns, where, like, the crime keeps getting worse, and, like, Batman has to handle the rising tide, and it's just not slowing down. So although Damian as an adult is, like, by far physically and mentally and gadgetly, like, the greatest Batman that will ever exist, he's genetically perfect, it's just the problems he's faced have to scale to that. So his Gotham has to be worse, because I feel like if you have a Batman of Damian's caliber and Gotham isn't hell, there's no conflict.
Okay. And see, I think that's an interesting idea, because, like, I guess when you explain it like that, that makes a lot more sense, and I'm much more okay with it. I worry, like, I guess the idea that it's always got to be a dark timeline is it's always got to be that he's Batman, but he's really, really bad at it. You know,
Yeah,
like, that's the thing.
I am with that, so that's maybe where we disagree.
Okay, because, like, I like to think that, yeah, like, it is just the worst Gotham's ever been. Like, it unfortunately, you know, Bruce's mission did truly fail. But I like to think that, like, he's had that development. He understands how not to let that cynicism get to him anymore. And he's able to kind of keep a sense of hope, and to try to, you know, even when things are in their darkest, he knows that, like, going out and being Batman every night is what's giving people hope for the future. I kind of like that idea that, like, yeah, he might be the Batman at the worst time, but he's still, like, just he's not the Batman from 666. He's not the Batman who became Batman through a deal with a demon, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like to think of that kind of timeline, I guess.
No, I think that's interesting. It's just the main problem we're both having here is there's just not enough content for us to really flesh this out more than just headcanon, because it's so interesting and we've both got different ideas of where we could go with it. And there's even some overlap there. Like if we sat down and fleshed this out, like this could be a fantastic book, because the idea and maybe the hope of Damien's situation is because of everything that Damien's been through and everything Damien has and all his whole baggage, Damien's always going to have to be fucked up. There's always going to be something there. He's never going to be 100% okay in the same way that Dick Grayson is. Because even Bruce can never truly be 100% okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of that, and Damien's been through the worst of it. But I feel like maybe there is some solace in the idea that Bruce's mission never really fails because him and Dick prepared Damien enough where if it was anyone else, Gotham would have blown up. Like, it has to be Damian who goes through the worst things imaginable, but he holds on just long enough that it passes, and then when he's an old man, he can pass all of that on to Terry, and then shit can start getting better. But if it wasn't Damian during all of what we imagine would happen during the Batman 660 timeline, everything would be fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, see, that I can completely agree with. And that's what, like, makes me think about, you know, Batman 666 Arkham Asylum 2.
Yes.
I really do hope that still happens. Like, it was announced at Comic-Con, and usually they don't announce something until there's a good chunk of the script done. So, I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Hopefully after Green Lantern, we'll get some concrete info on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those things that's, like, really, really intriguing to me about, you know, the future of Damian Wayne, and how that goes. Especially because Grant Morrison set it up so beautifully and no one decided to run with it, of Damian working with Terry. And, like, that's a really, really cool idea to me. I don't even know how much Grant Morrison gets Terry McGinnis. I don't think he's ever actually written him. But that would be cool as shit to see Grant Morrison write Terry McGinnis too. Yeah. So I don't know. Damian Wayne's future is something that always really interests me, and it's one of those things where it's kind of just always down the line, but it's never going to actually happen.
Like, I would kill for a Super Sons book just set in that time period for an arc.
That'd be great. Yeah, you wouldn't even have to worry about the Team John Kent thing anymore. It would just be fine. That would be beautiful. Yeah. All right. Anyway, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Alfie, who are we going to talk about next time?
Next time I'm thinking, because we've kind of been in a DC bit for a while.
Yeah.
I want to maybe move over to somewhere else.
DC bit, like when we talked about Majin Buu, that DC character.
So have you done one on Captain America?
Yes, unfortunately we have.
Alright, instead of Cap, have you done one on... that was my pick, man.
Sorry.
Search that more thoroughly. I will get back to you in the week on that then.
All right, sounds good.
Just know it won't be a DC character.
Okay, that's fair. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your Geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.